and cash was 2 trillion.
So 1.9 trillion is actual cash, and all the rest of it is just bull. There's not a bull.
Imagine we're at war with a country, and then they have the best. Like our card, it doesn't work. Whenever your credit cards fail, whenever your cards fail, whenever your banks fail, and you can't use your fucking card anymore, you have 3 days to get out of where you are because that's when they're coming for you. That's the big move. That's checkmate right there. And they think they have you. Well, move up to the country, get your scraps, stand up for yourself, build a tower, build a long road to where you can see them coming. Don't give up. America. I wonder if he got one of those cribs that he was talking about with our scraps.
All right, y'all go to jail. Get your ass and sit out.
Sandstone.
I didn't say it's the same as going over my life.
Okay, so I gotta check the date and see exactly when this was made. I'm pretty sure it was recently, like within the last week. This is happening in Canada, like right now. Again in Canada. So they're saying in Morocco it's happening because of a sandstorm, from what she says. Don't quote me on that, that's what she said. And in Canada, same exact thing is happening because of more fires. So what really is the cause, you know? You get a lot of people in the community that's going to say it's Nibiru, and you know it's like the iron oxide or something from the planet Nibiru, or
Hey everyone, I'm Kim Page. I am here today as a guest host with Mellisa Hera on Family Surviving CPS. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties with Mellisa getting logged in. I think she's trying to log in now. Mellisa, are you there?
Yeah, I'm
There
here.
we go.
Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Awesome. Yep, can hear you.
All right. Well,
Can you hear me?
now if my phone just cooperates today. So you want to talk a little bit about what you've been in your area up there with helping families and stuff?
Yeah, sure. So, I am in Minnesota, actually right on the Minnesota-Wisconsin line. And I have been helping a family who is dealing with a situation. Their situation stems from previously having been a foster parent to children who their parents did not want them because the children were special needs. The situation ended up being that it was a lesbian couple that adopted children out of foster care, children whose parents did not want them. All efforts were made by these people to have the parents be part of the children's lives, and the children were not a priority for these parents. At this particular juncture, it is a custody case now between the adoptive couple. The adoptive couple split in 2018 due to issues with domestic violence. For lack of a better terminology, the male of the couple ended up assaulting the wife and the children. There was physical, sexual assault, financial abuse. And during this whole situation, the couple lost their foster care license. The female ended up fighting like hell to get her foster care license back, and she was successful. Well, the abusive partner ended up deciding to become a CPS victims' rights advocate. She is very well known, and there have been some discoveries about this particular advocate. I will not discuss her name at the moment, but the discoveries have made this become a criminal court case. And I go to court dealing with the criminal court case Monday morning to deal with this particular advocate. This advocate has admitted to abusing her ex and the children, and now is trying to come in to pretend like she's an advocate for parents, when in actuality, what we've discovered is she's actually coming in to scam parents who have been abused by the system. So with this particular case, it's a little bit different from what I normally do. I'm trying to help protect parents from somebody who claims to be an advocate for them, but is actually trying to cause harm. So.
Right. Well, and maybe one thing, since, like, knowing her from here, because, you guys were best friends, you talked you thought she was great work. Mm-hmm. So getting up there and actually seeing hands-on some of the signs of dealing with bad advocates, bad attorneys, bad help in general, what should families look for?
One of the things that I noticed when I got up here, so I came up here in December. Everybody knows that I came up here. Everybody knows that I've helped, knows that I came up here. I came up here, and the plan was that I was going to stay with her temporarily until we were able to locate a short-term rental for me to be up here while I assisted her in being able to get her children back from her ex. In that time period, I was able to see the kind of person she is in a more intimate setting because we were living in the same home for about 30 days. Looking back on conversations that she and I've had, there were tons of inconsistencies in what she would say. One day she would say that, the sky's blue, and the next day the sky's green. So one of the things that I would suggest for parents, number one, if you hear other advocates say that one advocate is a bad advocate, number one, I would not say for you to just take them at their word, because we have a lot of advocates that are at each other's throats for personal stuff, and it really has nothing to do with being an advocate or their work fighting CPS. But I would actually take that information and store it in the back of your mind. Don't forget about it. Don't just brush it off, but keep it in the back of your mind and see if there are any of the red flags that may indicate that whatever somebody told you is true. But one of the biggest things that I saw was the inconsistencies in her story. She would say that she wasn't allowed to see her children for 5 years because of her ex preventing her from doing so. However, when she provided me with some of the court documentation, that's not what the court documentation said. The court documentation actually said that she had the ability to see her children, but the court had limited her to supervised visits due to her admitting to abusing her ex and the children. Well, instead of her exercising these rights, she decided that she wasn't going to exercise these rights because she did not want to pay the visitation company to do the supervised visits. So she forego her visits with her children for 5 years and blamed it on her ex, trying to make her ex seem like this horrible person who is just was just a foster parent for money. In actuality, everything that this advocate has said is actually the things that she's doing, but she's trying to project onto other people.
Right.
So my advice when you're dealing with an advocate or an attorney or a guardian ad litem is pay attention. If your gut says something's not right, dig, ask questions. Don't just say, oh, no, they're a sweet person, they're really kind, they've done this, they're fun, they're charismatic. Those are actually the biggest traits of a narcissist and an abuser and a user. And this person is taking advantage of parents. Not only her ex, but she's also taking advantage of parents. We have parents out there who have lost their children because of this advocate. And this advocate, when she causes these parents to lose their children, she then starts bashing those parents because the parents try to warn other parents about her. So go with your gut. If your gut says that this person is not trustworthy or there's something wrong in the situation, go with it. Ask other people about them. Google their name. A lot of times you're going to find stuff online. One of the very first things that I found when I Googled her name was a court document where she admitted in court to abusing her ex and their children. So don't just take people at their word. Do some research. And if you ever have an advocate that asks you for money, immediately ask for proof that they can do what they're trying to pay you or ask you to pay them to do. Ask for, proof of their work. Ask for references. Do not be afraid to ask for references. Do not be afraid to ask for proof of their work. A good advocate is going to be willing to say, here's 1,000 people, here's 100 people, here's whatever documents you need to prove that I am who I say I am.
Right. Well, and one of the things that we were talking about last night, speaking of advocates, because we was speaking with Cheryl from National Action Network, and we were talking about being very proactive. Know your local politicians. Know your judicial seats. Know who's up for election. Know who's pro-kid, who's anti, whatever. And we were also talking about bringing the corruption out into the limelight, bringing these, bringing the media, but whether it's, shoes on the street down at the local courthouse or the local county commissioner's office or whatnot, to putting newspaper articles out. And how, as advocates, that's our job, is to bring the correct media in to help expose the corruption.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. And, one of the things that we as advocates, it's not just our job to hold the hands of the parents and say, let me help you understand your court documents, or let me help you be able to talk to your attorney in a more effective way. It's also our job to make sure that we're a squeaky wheel, because squeaky wheels are the ones that get the oil. They're the ones that get the attention.
Right.
So the louder that advocates are willing to be in trying to expose CPS, the better off we all are. And that's the other thing, is if you have somebody that's saying that they're going to advocate for you, look at them and see if they're willing to put themselves out there, and they're willing to be a squeaky wheel. Because this is a very dangerous thing for us to do as advocates. I've had my life threatened more than once. I've been put in handcuffs more than once trying to expose CPS. Gotten a judge off the bench. I've gotten four assistant attorney generals brought up on an investigation with the bar. Got the FBI involved in one case. It's something that is extremely, extremely dangerous, but it's even more dangerous if that advocate is not trustworthy.
Right.
So we gotta make sure that these advocates are willing to step out there and put their name out there. But when they do put their name and face out there, that what they're saying is not going to hurt the people who they're alleging they're trying to help.
No, because honestly, it's kind of, they moved my daughter the other day. The worker didn't see moving my daughter as moving a child. It was just taking a puppy from one spot and throwing it in another. Oh well. And a bad advocate, a bad court-appointed attorney, hell, a bad retained attorney. That leaves your kid tied up in limbo longer. And
it does more for the child as well, because your daughter has been with the same people.
Yeah, she was there 2 years. Almost 2 years.
She's got there's a huge bond.
And honestly, we actually figured out last night, we think they moved her up to Greenville, and actually she's with a CPS worker.
That's not a conflict of interest or anything.
No, because I took the name, and last night we were people searching, and the only one within a reasonable driving distance that has that name is a CPS worker from the next county over.
Doesn't surprise me.
But
I know that there was somebody in Mobile County, Alabama. You're in Alabama right now. In Mobile County, what was about a month or so ago, a CPS worker that was actually charged with abusing her adult brother who's disabled. So why are these CPS workers being allowed to have these children who are vulnerable? if they're gonna, they're we've got workers that have drug histories and felony records that are out there taking people's children. This isn't okay.
No, it definitely isn't. And only through uniting together will we be able to somehow fight this system. I think that the work that Connie's doing to try to get advocates into the courtroom, and the work that Cheryl's doing with trying to build the amount of advocates we have is a huge thing. Because right now, National Action Network has at least one location to just about every state out there, or someone at least assigned to the state, even if they don't have a physical location. Okay, so now if we have, I think there's something like 600 plus through that system. Now, if what Connie was saying is Mo Brooks from Alabama here is the one sponsoring her bill for advocates in the courtroom.
Wow, that's surprising.
Which he's actually the Senate for my county. He's Congress. He's the one assigned to my district, so I thought that was a little funny. But anyways, if she gets that bill pushed through, and we have all these advocates, and we all start banding together, I think we can make a change. It just
we can, but the problem is we have too many advocates that are fighting amongst each other. It's a pissing contest. It's, who can whip it out longer, that has it bigger to whip out.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of these advocates are not working to fix a problem. They are working so they can get accolades. And I don't care if a single person knows who I am when I leave this earth.
Right.
All I care about is knowing that I helped these children and these parents that can't help themselves. That's all I care about. Say whatever you want to say
exactly.
about me.
Same here.
Couldn't care less.
I'm in southern Alabama. I went to Maine to help a family, and the grandma is getting the child. Where before the mom's rights were being terminated and no one was being considered.
Right. And that's I know that you did. Majority of it was and that's what I'm doing here with what's going on in Minnesota is I'm doing this on my own dime. As a matter of fact, in December, in November, Mellisa, you and your husband came to my house in Gadsden, Alabama, and helped me load everything up and take it to a storage unit down in South Alabama near you. I gave up my lease so that I could come up here. 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. Gave up my lease so I could come up here and help this advocate. I've done all this on my own dime to be able to help this person. And unfortunately, there were some signs that I missed. I missed some of the signs of her narcissism and what kind of person she really was. And so I had to change gears with this. But I've done this on my own dime. I've probably spent, since I came up here, December 12th was the first day I was in Minnesota. And I've been up here, I have probably spent upwards of $10,000 working
easily.
This situation. And I haven't asked for a penny from anybody. Not for a cent. I'm the one out here, doing Lyft to be able to get the money to be able to pay for the things that I'm doing. Unfortunately, I've got some fantastic passengers in the area. They all know what I do. And every one of them, they're always, we're going to give you some extra money to be able to help you be able to do the work that you're doing. But it's still costly.
Yeah.
It's still extremely costly.
Yeah. Well, and it just like that trip I made up to Maine, you know, the grandparent actually did help cover fuel and everything. But when I got back, I was still a couple $1,000 lighter in the pocket than when I went. So it wasn't even like it was a, you know, it was darn sure no paid vacation. And it was probably.
And you know, the thing is, the advocates that do this, majority of them do not have the financial ability to do it.
No.
We struggle to pay to be able to make ends meet for ourselves, but we're still putting ourselves in a financial situation, you know, that we're helping other parents. And that's the other thing, you know, if you have an advocate out there who is living high on the hog, you know, that's not an advocate that's working for you. That's an advocate that's working for themselves.
Oh, definitely.
That's a red flag. That's a red flag. That's a big red flag.
Well, and you know, I had someone not that long ago, they approached me and they said, well, Mellisa, we get that you know how, actually it's one of the families that I'm helping out of Tennessee, and he says, okay, he says, I get that you know this law inside and out and you can quote it and this, that, and the next. He says, but how are you going to be able to help me when you haven't got your own kids home? And my answer to him was, you know, Charles, at least you have a judge that will hear your case. I said, unfortunately, I'm dealing with bad politics, not just the department.
And I've been asked that same question as well. And the thing is that what I've told people is there's mistakes that I made in my case, because when I first started my case, I knew nothing about any of this stuff. I had no idea. I was just as naive as everybody else is in thinking that CPS doesn't take children away from parents unless parents have done something wrong. And we all know that that's not true. And so the things that I did in my case, starting out with, I screwed up a lot of stuff. And that's probably why some of the things that have happened in my case happened the way they happened, because I didn't know better at the time. Well, the thing is how can I help another parent get their kids when I haven't got mine back? It's because I've learned from my mistakes. And what I can do is I can help a parent to keep from making those same mistakes, because I've been there and I've done that. And I know what the results of that misstep is going to be. So I can tell them, watch out, there's a booby trap. Watch out, there's you know, a fault line there. This is the way you need to go. This is not the way you need to go. So when you have an advocate that hasn't got their children back, it's not a situation where, oh, don't trust that advocate because they don't know what they're talking about. Actually, those advocates are the ones that you do want to work with, because it's those advocates who have been there where you
that care the most,
through the same hell that you're going through, and they know how to avoid the pitfalls that you are about to step into.
Right. Well, and that's what I ended up telling him, because he had an issue where when his case started, he was supposed to be holding a 72-hour hearing. And, you know, Tennessee's very big that the 72-hour hearing cannot exceed, you know, 72 hours plus no more than a 72-hour extension. Well, 14 days later, they try holding a 72-hour hearing, and they're giving him crap because he actually his aunt had guardianship. He was trying to get the custody back of her, and his aunt had passed away, and the judge, for all intents purposes, considers him the parent until he says, well, Your Honor, I want my kid. And then it's, oh, no, she's a dependent. But that kid got in trouble in school not that long ago. And the judge sent him the bill for it, but then turns around and tells him he's not the custodian, all in the same breath.
Yep. I mean,
So it's been an interesting case, and yeah, and the biggest part of his case is he's dealing with a judge that is unfortunately very racist. And the judge doesn't like him, married to his white wife, and they won't consider anything they say or do.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Like I told him, his case ain't a case we're gonna win in the trial court.
Right.
And most cases aren't.
Most cases are not won in the trial court. Most cases are won in the appeals court. I've actually got a case in South Alabama right now in Mobile County, or maybe Baldwin County. Anyway, it's in Mobile, but the youngest child, it's 3 children in the CPS case, and the youngest child has a different father from the oldest 2. CPS is this man has signed the birth certificate. He has signed an affidavit of paternity, and CPS is hell bent on forcing this father to submit to a DNA test to disprove his paternity of his child, to say that he's not the father of this child when he wants to be dad. Whether he biologically was or wasn't, he wants to be this child's father. They're trying to say, no, we're going to prove that you're not the father so that we can step in as the state and say this child doesn't have a father, so we're going to step in as that paternal figure and we're going to take custody from the mom. There's plenty of laws that says that they cannot, or case law that says they can't do this. And as a matter of fact, this family went to court this morning on a motion to show cause, which is basically a contempt motion, to have the parents held in contempt because this man refuses to do a DNA test. He has the legal right to not do a DNA test.
I'll blame him.
But here's the thing. His attorney contacted him about a month ago. Why are you not doing the DNA test? And he said, I don't legally have to. The attorney said, but the judge ordered it. But the judge doesn't have the legal authority to order it. And instead of this attorney...
Right, yeah, because he's already stood up and said that I'm the father. I want to be there. I want to do what's needed for my family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what difference does DNA matter? Because when the system turns around and takes this child from them, they're going to sell him to the next guy that they call daddy. So
Exactly.
how does it make any sense, and why does it matter? A good parent is a good parent.
Exactly. And you know, these parents went to court this morning to deal with this. I haven't heard from them today on the court, what's happened with court yet. They'll probably get back to me a little later on because today also was their visitation day. So, you know, I'm waiting to find out what happened with that. But, you know, the thing is that these parents CPS is trying to hold them in contempt of court for acting as the law says they're allowed to against a bad judge's order. The judge does not have the legal authority. There is case law that says that it is not the judge's ability to order a father to submit to DNA in an effort to disprove paternity. The judge only has the ability to order DNA to establish paternity, not disprove.
To prove paternity.
Yes.
Right.
To say that.
Well, if you remember, Kim, that's actually what they did in my case when my daughter was born. I filled out all the paperwork with my husband's information on it, and they altered my documents
Yep.
to say that we refused father information. And when we walked into court, because the director of DHR had told me, says the only way he's going to have any kind of right to his kid is you have to be married. And that was her pre-warning me, because when we walked into that court, they tried to say that my deceased ex-husband was the father of the kid.
Yep.
And they was dead set that
they did that because having him being deceased means, you know, the law states, and this is a roundabout way to say this, but the law states that if there is not a parent, two parents to act as parent for the children, that the state is to step in to be that second parent. They wanted your deceased husband to be the biological father because it made it easier for the state to step in to be the second parent. And when the state is able to step in to be the second parent, and it is a parent with butt tons of money versus a parent with no money, who's going to win? The state's going to win. So that's why they do those things. But in Alabama, there's so many case law to establish that they can't do those things, but they do it anyway. And the reason that they get away with it is because nobody understands that they can't do these things, and that the way that you stop them from doing these things is not to raise hell to your friends, not to get on Facebook and talk about your caseworker. It's to stand in court and say, Your Honor, you don't have the legal authority to do this. And if the judge does it anyway, you have to put something in writing on the record to say, I object to this. You don't have the legal right to do it. And you don't have to be able to write motions to be able to put something on the record. You can literally just write it down on a piece of paper and file it to the court record to say, I object to the judge ordering this. They don't have the legal right to do it. Here is proof they don't have the legal right to do it, but they're doing it anyway. So, you know, parents think that they don't have any ability to be able to fight the system. And it's honestly not as hard as some advocates try to make it seem like it is. I mean, Mike Bartz is on with us today. Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
He knows what this is about. He knows how easy it is to get through a court case when you actually take time to stand up for it. It's not hard to get past a court case if you are willing to stand up and be that squeaky wheel. It's really not. It's just knowing what to say and being willing to say it.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, but it's ridiculous. I mean, when you have a situation where you have a business that's its sole goal is to make profit for their stakeholders, you know, it's very difficult to be able to beat them. And you're gonna have to be willing. A lot of parents are scared to get out there and talk about their case. Number one, because they're afraid of, you know, they're going to be judged for this or they're going to be judged for that, or CPS is going to keep their kids longer because of them talking out, or the judge is going to punish them in this way or that because of them speaking out. But what I have found, and I know, Mellisa, that you're going to agree with me on this, is that the parents who speak out the loudest are the ones who have the most change in their case. They're the ones who end up making things possible for the next parent to not be screwed over by the system. So we've got to stop being scared to stand up to these people. If you look at history, during World War II, we had the Nazis. We had Hitler's SS men going in and scaring the citizens of Germany into compliance, into doing what the government said for them to do. And what happened to those people? Those people were hauled off into concentration camps, and then they were forced into showers, acid showers. These people were murdered because they complied, because they did what the government told them to do. I, for one, would rather go down in a blaze of glory, knowing that I stood there and continued to fight for my children, and that one day my children will be able to look back and see what their mother did to try to stop what happened to them, than to keep quiet. The only way to make a change, is for us to band together and to not be quiet. Okay. What?
Why don't you recap about your best friend Chris and how the system worked against him?
And in November of 2020, Chris Buchanan of Talladega County, Alabama, CPS came to his home and took his children. 3 years prior to this, CPS came to his home and took his children and put them on a safety plan. The reason they put his children on the safety plan to begin with was because his wife had killed herself. Chris had 5 little girls. His wife killed herself 6 weeks after she gave birth to their youngest child. And CPS came and told Chris that you can't be a father to 5 girls. You can't. We're not going to let you do this. So they put his children on a safety plan with his brother and sister in Tennessee. This whole safety plan was completely illegal because it's required for out-of-state placement, and ICPC is required to be done. And ICPC is a process where they actually go in and basically change the physical possession, the physical custody of the children from one CPS state agency to another CPS state agency. This is something that generally takes quite a few weeks. But they ended up taking Chris's children and placing them with his brother and his sister and brother-in-law. Chris contacted me, and we were able to get his children off of the safety plan. A few years later, Chris ended up with CPS coming back to get his children again. This time, Chris had actually made arrangements to leave the state of Alabama. He was moving. He and his children were going to relocate. They were sick of everything going on in Alabama. One of the things was that Chris, being a single father with limited income, he actually qualified for food stamps. But CPS had gone in with the first time that they had put the children on the safety plan and said that Chris had lost legal custody of his children. So after he ends up coming back to Alabama after getting the kids off the safety plan, he applies for food stamps. He can't get food stamps because they're wanting him to prove that he has custody of his kids. Not something you can do when you've never actually lost custody of your kids. So it's just his word against CPS. So Chris struggled tremendously financially with his children. So in November of 2022, Chris went to work. He left his children with one of his neighbors and normally he didn't do this. Normally his children went with him. He had the ability to take his children with him to work. But one of the neighbors was having a birthday party and the kids wanted to stay for the party. So he left the children with the neighbor and was not going to be back till late that night, possibly after midnight. Somehow in this whole situation, one of the neighbors decided to call CPS, not only on Chris, but on 2 other families in his neighborhood. So CPS comes out and, CPS didn't come out. It was in the middle of the night. They actually sent out a police officer, a sheriff's deputy. The sheriff's deputy went out to Chris's house and ended up speaking to Chris's oldest daughter and actually threatened her, told her that she would get in significant amount of trouble if she told her dad that the cop came by. So Chris finds out a little later on in the night that this cop came by, and he goes and he gets his kids and he brings them to his parents' house, which is in South Alabama. Chris leaves the kids with his parents, and CPS ends up coming and telling the children, or telling him they're putting them on a safety plan. Chris took the children off the safety plan and left the state, which is what he had been planning on doing to move out of the state. CPS, after Chris took the children out of state, CPS went to the court and got custody of the children. Then they went to the media they went to the sheriff's department and to the media. They told the sheriff's department that they already had custody of the children and that Chris took the children while having a visit with his kids. So the Talladega County Sheriff's Department issued a worldwide Amber Alert for these girls. And Chris was arrested on November 17th for custodial interference. Again, Chris was out of state with these children before CPS went and got custody of these kids. Chris was standing in my living room when he was illegally arrested. A different jurisdiction came in, busted in my home, did not have a warrant for his arrest, did not have a warrant to come into my home, busted into my home and placed him under arrest standing in my living room. Chris stayed in jail for 6 months. When he was finally released, he was not allowed to see his kids. Two days before Chris's birthday, he put a gun to his head and he killed himself. He had not seen his children in almost a year. He had spent 6 months in jail for a crime that didn't even happen. All because CPS wanted these little girls. All because CPS wanted these beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girls. So now, these beautiful little girls have lost both their mother and their father because Talladega County Sheriff's Deputy Al Crow was the one who arrived on the scene when his wife killed herself. He went on a whole campaign against Chris, trying to say that Chris murdered his wife. So every single time there was anything at all in Chris's neighborhood that involved the police or involved CPS, they knocked on his door. Even if his house wasn't the one it was called on, they would go to his house. They harassed Chris for 3 years. It turns out that the neighbor that called CPS was the cousin of Al Crow. And I can't confirm or deny this, but this cousin was asked by Crow to call CPS. And from the information that I've found, The reason that Al Crow is hell bent on taking Chris's kids is because his his daughter was taken by CPS because he's abusive. And there's some evidence to show that Al Crow was working with CPS, had made a deal that if he will get them more children, they will give him his child back. So he targeted Chris, a good man, a Christian father. His children adored him. Al Crow targeted Chris. Worked with CPS, making false
Well,
calls.
and last night when we were talking to Cheryl, she was talking about one of the first cases she really got involved in, and she was actually placement for the children while she helped the family fight. But the state trooper stopped a Georgia family that crossed into Tennessee and found, I guess, a blunt on him, 2 grams of weed. And the state trooper got very verbally aggressive with him and said, "Show me where all the rest of your drugs are, or I'm going to call CPS." So he actually pre-calls CPS, and then after they bring the dogs through the car, they search the car, they do everything to prove that there's nothing there. Well, the CPS worker turns around and calls the cop back and says, "I'm here at your station. You bring me those kids." And I think it's so horrible that our government officials, our police, the people that are supposed to be protecting us, think it's funny to use CPS as an extra way to exert their authority over us.
These are Chris's children. Hope, the youngest one, was just turned 2 right after they took her. So this little girl has no idea who either one of her parents are because she died. Because they both died while she was too young to remember them. This is Chris. I have literally seen him give people the shirt off his back when they were in need. Chris would do anything to help another person. He would do anything to protect his children. I've never met anybody with such a kind soul as Chris.
Well,
Al Crow set in this whole campaign to destroy Chris, even though every bit of evidence showed that Chris's wife killed herself. Al Crow was hell-bent that Chris murdered her. All evidence showed that he did not. All evidence showed that she killed herself. The coroner report, everything showed this. Al Crow was the only person in the Talladega County Sheriff's Department who said that Chris killed his wife. And he went on this entire campaign to destroy Chris. This is Chris's wife. This is Carrie. 6 weeks after she gave birth to Hope, she killed herself. She was suffering from postpartum depression. And instead of supporting this family, CPS was more interested in destroying them. They were more interested in destroying the lives of this man and his children for money. He put a gun to his head and he took his life. He took his life because CPS took his children. And you know, the thing is that in the court case, there was nothing that they complained against him that gave them a reason to take his children. They said that he was only feeding his children rice and noodles, and that was the reason that they should take his children from him. Rice and noodles would not have been the only things that he was feeding children, which they weren't, but they wouldn't have been the only thing that he was able to feed his children if CPS had not lied and said that he didn't have custody of his kids to keep him from being able to get the food stamps that he qualified for. But instead of trying to help this family, they drove him to suicide. 6 months he was in jail for a crime that never happened. And nobody cared. So now we have, Chris has 2 sisters who now have lost their big brother. Chris was the only boy of the family. So his dad has lost his only son, his firstborn child, his namesake. Because CPS wants money. And because Al Crow of the Talladega County Sheriff's Department had a hard-on for trying to destroy the life of this man. Chris wasn't strong enough to be able to fight. And dealing with my own case, there's been many times when I've wanted to take my own life. Melissa actually saved my life last year. This is not an easy fight. It never will be. But we have to be willing to stand together and not give up. There's too many children out there that need us. Melissa, did you get your technical issues taken care of?
Oh, yes. Darren finally got let back into my own show.
Well, I've kind of been talking about Chris a little bit, and you know, we just
I've been here. I just been stuck in the back room because internet's been down, so we're running on cell service here in the middle of nowhere today.
Oh yes, and your area is really crappy for cell service out there too. So
right, the cows don't subscribe to enough internet service.
Yeah, and those trees don't do a whole lot of good for you.
But on that note, you know, if there's anything that you can tell the parents out there about what they need to do to put up their fight and to keep going, what would you tell a parent? If you had your case to do all over again and there was one good bit of advice you wish someone would have told you, what do you want to say to them?
The one thing that I would say is don't be scared to talk to people. Don't be scared to ask for help. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. I spent the first 9 months of my case being ashamed to ask anybody for help because parents don't get their children taken away from them unless they're bad parents. They shame us into not wanting to talk to anybody. And that's why Chris is gone, because, you know, Chris wouldn't talk. I mean, as much as he did talk to me, he still didn't tell everything. And that's why he's gone. And that's why we have all these other parents that have committed suicide, because they're ashamed to talk. Or because...
Well, and there's a huge amount of parents that have lost their lives in this fight. And instead of thinking that you're stuck in a room with no one to let you out, you know, reach out to your neighbor, reach out to chat groups, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. Time that we all start bonding together, and it's time that we all stand up and be heard, because only in numbers is things going to change. Because when you walk into your local department, there's at least 10 of them and there's 1 of you. But if the next time you go down there, there's 10 of you and 10 of them, then they got to think twice, because now you're making noise. Create your own community groups, and if you need help with things and you want to know what direction to go, you want to learn to become an advocate, drop us a message. Because we are running training programs. We do want to teach people to stand up and fight. And never be afraid to ask for help. Never be afraid to ask what your rights are. And if you want to hear it from an attorney, get the free consults. Call every attorney in your state.
And being an advocate doesn't have to mean that you have to learn the legal side of it. It doesn't mean that you have to put any financial anything into it. You literally just could be a support system that sits there and says, I'm going to hold your hand when you walk into court. I'm going to be there to listen to you at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're struggling not to take the handful of pills that you've got or drink the bottle of liquor that you just bought. Being an advocate has so many different things that you can do. We have advocates. We have needs for advocates with so many different things. Parents, there's some parents that, maybe their issues are their home is not organized. They're a hoarder, and they need somebody to tell them how to not do that. Organizational professional. Guess what? You can be an advocate for that parent. You don't have to have the legal knowledge.
Right.
You don't even have to go through training to be an advocate. You just have to be willing to help in any way that you possibly can, so that parent
absolutely
doesn't give up.
Well, Kim, we've hit the end of our show, and we're actually ran a couple minutes over, but for anyone that wants to be on the show, wants to have their stories heard, wants to ask for help, drop us a message, let us know. And on that's going to wrap up today's show. Everyone keep up the good fight and keep moving forward.
In the United States. This all began when President Bill Clinton signed the Adoption and Safe Family
Molly's right here. I got you, baby. I'm not hurting you. I'm supporting my daughter because this is going to court. I love you, baby.
Greetings world. We are anonymous. Families are being destroyed. Children are being emotionally torn apart. In the United States. This all began when President Bill Clinton signed the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997. Since then, taking children from their loving parents has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Children are now seen as walking, breathing bags of money for corrupt state governments all over the United States. The US government incentivizes the kidnapping of children by providing lump sums of cash from federal funding to the states.
Going to CPS, trying to work everything out with them, thinking my son might be adopted.
Our children are the most precious people in our lives. We must protect them. In many cases, children are taken from their loving parents for the smallest of reasons, such as eating too much fruit or smoking a joint in their own home. Child Protective Services, CPS, has all been known for massive corruption, the falsifying of documents, statements, and the list goes on.
Now, state police issued an Amber Alert for the pair on Monday after she failed to turn her son over to CYFD. On Tuesday, Bryant went on Facebook claiming she's the victim of CPS corruption.
This is a legal, human trafficking mafia with unlimited power and absolutely no accountability.
You want to juice, Mama? You want to take your juice? You want to drink a little bit right now?
Let her hold her since she seems to be kind of the calmest right now.
Okay.
This is a call to all, remove your fear, and put on your masks. Find all of the CPS groups on social media platforms, get involved, do extensive research. Arm yourself with information. If you live in fear of the CPS mafia, then remove your fear, join with others and fight back. We will push to change the system, as long as the CPS uses corrupted methods to destroy our lives.
The Department of Child Protective Services has become a protected empire, built on taking children and separating families.
This is Nancy Schaefer. She gave up her career, and later her life, for the fight against CPS. The details of her murder are very suspicious, and many believe that she was murdered by the CPS for her heroic deeds. Please research her.
This is not to say that there are not those children who do need to be removed from wretched situations and need protection. However, my report is concerned with the children and parents caught up in legal kidnapping. Having worked with probably 300 cases statewide and hundreds across the country, and in nearly every state, I am convinced there is no accountability. There is no accountability. There is no accountability in Child Protective Services.
CPS is well known for massive corruption and criminal acts.
Assault, burglary, DWI, theft, domestic violence, indecent exposure, prostitution, possession of cocaine and marijuana, and selling alcohol to minors. What do all of these crimes have in common? They are just some of the crimes committed by people who work for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. That's right, the agency in charge of protecting Texas children. We found more than 370 employees have a criminal background. Some have direct contact with foster kids. David Mendoza pled guilty to assault with bodily injury to a family member and violating a protective order. He's a CPS supervisor in El Paso. Richard Landon was arrested for indecent exposure in 1997, and in 1994 he was arrested for prostitution after soliciting an undercover cop. He also works for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services.
Look at that baby. Look how beautiful that baby is. They'll get hundreds of thousands of federal funds, especially if they put it on a couple psychotropic drugs, and then they'll adopt it out to somebody.
We call all to join together and stop this mafia. Child Protective Services, also known as CPS. CPS custody is one of the most dangerous places for a child. Many children are abused and sometimes even killed.
If somebody hurts my son, I'm filing a lawsuit.
CPS, Child Protective Services, we are waking up to your corruption involved with children, and we will expose you. We are anonymous, we are legion, we do not forgive, and we never forget. CPS, expect us.